Hello everyone, it's the Storyteller here. I've prepared something slow, eerie, and sleep-friendly for you tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments. Are you drifting off already, or still wide awake? Past Imperfect W. Mentions of mental and physical abuse. Bill sat bolt upright in the hotel bed, heart pounding to a familiar refrain. The dream had reasserted itself with a vengeance from the moment he'd seen the updated list of people attending the conference. One name had stood out. Dake Scratchard was the name of the boy who'd haunted Bill Brown's life more years than he cared to remember. Dreams fueled by past memories disturbed his nights when equal amounts of dread and fear surged through his veins, rendering him helpless. As always, the nightmare was a variation on a theme. In it, Bill was a teenage boy running from the gang. He often came close to evading capture, but at the last minute tripped over his shoelaces or some other encumbrance. Then he found himself falling flat on his face outside the old school toilets, the inner doors of which rose up like whited sepulchres. Up close, he could see every cell of his tormentor's face. Ginger needs to be taught a lesson, came out of that hate-filled mouth. A bully, aided by his contemptible band of followers, with their menacing chants of Ginger, Ginger, Ginger. Even now, their words filled the corridors of his mind like a background hiss. No! The sound seemed to come from somewhere outside, as if it belonged to someone else. Not him. You're just begging for it, Billy Ginger. If the teachers won't correct you, we must do it for them. Billy knew no teacher would come. They were never there when you needed them. In any case, the gang always had some lackey watching out. Soon they'd have him crawling on his hands and knees, scooting about like an insect, while they kicked him on the hard stone floor, their mocking jeers running through him. He was nothing more than a piece of meat to be hauled about. For them, the high point was shoving his face into the toilet bowl. The stench was the least of it. Clinging for support, he tried to keep everything tight shut while they flushed. Knowing he could not hold out for long, he spluttered to be let go. Then, just as he was about to give up, a final flush signaled his release. He was pulled up, squirming like a rat from a sewer, and left heaving on the floor. For a few minutes, he lay there curled and defenseless, all resistance gone, until the next time, and the time after that. Something so primal, so feral. He could smell it now. Even after all this time, he was defined by it, as if the abuse had become part of a warped pattern of D and A, making him only half human. But somehow, he'd known he was worth more than that. At least his dog seemed to think so. Through it all, the only thing that kept Bill going was the thought of the black Labrador faithfully waiting in the porch. Back home, Kelpie licked away the wounds and salt tears, stayed beside him till the pain subsided. Without Kelpie, he would not have survived, for the purity of a dog's heart knows no bounds. Switching on the bedside lamp, Bill waited until his breathing steadied. Coughing, he climbed into a dressing gown and stepped out onto a small balcony. In the courtyard below, the air was prescient with a damp chill. A few lone trees were scattering leaves marking the onset of winter. Inhaling a sneaky cigarette, Bill considered his options. It had all happened so long ago, yet the dream had reignited the past, making him feel he could never escape its clutches. If Bill recited the facts of his life enough times, he almost convinced himself of their worth. On paper, he'd worked hard, got married and divorced, and had a son he barely saw. He'd mostly married his wife to please his father because she came from a better background, and look where that had got him. It wasn't his ex's fault if along the way he'd supplemented whatever was missing with a few women he was physically attracted to, but not much else. In the end, it had been like ships passing in the night, all except for Bella. With her, he'd come close to casting a loveless marriage aside. But in the end, something had stopped him. The risk of getting it wrong had been too great, but all that was in the past. Although Bella had recently returned to the company where they both worked, albeit in a less demanding role, he rarely saw her these days. And according to rumors, she was now with someone in the shower. Bill imagined washing the past down the plug hole. Soon he planned to do just that. The only fly in the ointment, of course, was Bella. He wasn't sure whether she'd be attending the conference. Really, bumping into her was the least of his worries. But if he did, so be it. He hadn't actually seen her name on the list of attendees, so it seemed unlikely. Overall, it would be easier if she didn't attend, because that afternoon, Bill was making his first big speech in his new role as Regional Operations Manager. As if there wasn't enough going on without having to deal with affairs of the heart. The speech, eagerly anticipated, was expected to be the highlight of the day. In the hotel room, examining the set of knives his father had given him as an 18th birthday present, Bill was confronted by powerful emotions. Before him were a dazzling array of sharp pieces, all with wooden handles for an extra firm grip. It was almost pleasurable selecting the one with the pointed end. He carefully placed it in a sheath and adding it to a concealed section of his briefcase. In the mirror, he observed hair that was thinning a little at the sides. Other than that, it was still thick and brown, with just a hint of chestnut. Impressive in a well-cut suit, he was tall enough to be considered distinguished. To some, his features might be regarded as handsome. His eyes, however, were preternaturally bright. Sighing deeply, he exited the room. Clutching his laptop and briefcase, he made his way along the plushly carpeted corridor, entered the lift, and headed the 3 floors down to the conference room area. Psyching himself up for whatever lay ahead, he focused on his achievements. Only by drawing on every retail milestone was he able to make sense of the wasteland that was his emotional life. His mind's eye framed the certificates that took pride of place on his home office wall, charting his journey from sales assistant to the coveted role of regional operations manager for one of the country's most successful chain stores. Stores that sold fashionable clothes and accessories for prices most people could afford. Bill's journey into a better life had only really begun when his parents had moved from a London suburb to a city in the Midlands. Then aged 15, he'd welcomed the move with open arms, for it had given him a chance to start afresh in a place where no one knew him, especially at school. He had loved walking unrecognized through the city's streets and visiting its ancient cathedral. One Saturday morning, plucking up courage, he'd walked into one of the city's department stores and landed himself a Saturday job in the menswear department. When he returned home, his mum made him a cup of tea, and Kelpie wagged a warm greeting. You could do a lot worse. They've got people queuing up to get a place in that store, his mum had commented. Then, examining him more closely, she observed, You've darkened your hair. Isn't that what Elvis Presley did? I expect so. I never liked my natural color, and I want to fit in at this school. That was the closest he'd come to admitting the bullying at his old school. He never told anyone about the suicidal thoughts. He couldn't miss her. Bella was a figure of light breaking the conference room formality and wearing the most distinctive outfit. To him, she was the classiest person there, surrounded as she was by an adoring team of managers at one of the middle tables. Distracted by her presence, he could hardly wait for a chance to speak to her. The chance came while she was lining up to choose from a tray of canapes during the lunch break. I wasn't expecting you to be here, Bella, he said. I wasn't expecting to be here, but there was a change of plan. It's so good to see you. He found himself saying, Well, I missed the company and the people. I wasn't the right fit for the new position, even if it was a promotion. It seemed fortuitous when my old vacancy came up again. So, you didn't have a problem with going back to your old role? There's no need to avoid using the word demotion. I won't be offended, she laughed. I came to realize I didn't need all the hassle that goes with a high-powered job. I realized I'd made a mistake, and the opportunity came to rectify it. I want a simple life, especially now I'm single. Don't worry, it's all worked out for the best. He wasn't right for me either. Bill could hardly believe what he was hearing. It's really good to see you, he said again. I'm glad you think that, she said, smiling brightly. Catching up with Bella had been great. So much so Watching her sleeping the next morning, Bill had almost forgotten about the other thing. He decided he'd know what to do when the time came. If it came, Bill was pouring coffee when Bella opened her eyes. They were warm, like kelpies had once been. "That smells good," she said. "I remembered you like it's strong." The world outside remained foggy and damp. But for the moment, none of that mattered. Fully dressed, Bill joined Bella on the bed. "What's the matter? You look like you've got the world on your shoulders," she said kindly. "Nothing. Just the conference. A lot to think about." But that was only partly true. If only he could tell her what was really on his mind. Part of him wondered whether meeting Bella again was purely coincidental, or a sign he should let the past go, once and for all. He might have said more, but then the phone rang. "Good luck with the speech." "Not that you're going to need it," Bella said, getting up and kissing him. Down. On the way to the conference room, Bill overheard a conversation between two hotel staff members. "Are the cameras still out?" "Only on the 3rd floor. Also, the ones by the bathroom. They're down, too." "Okay, not good. How long before they are fixed?" "A few hours at most. Maintenance will get it sorted. It won't affect the general running of things." Bill felt almost disappointed to hear the news about the cameras. After his night with Bella, he'd been on the verge of scrapping his original plan. Now fate seemed to be pulling him back, yet he still hadn't come across his nemesis. Chairman. About 40 minutes into the second day of conference, a man best described as nondescript entered the hall. Head down, he weaved his way to the numbered seat. Bill clocked him, and his heart sank. Something of the man's stance reminded him of Dake Scratchard grown older. But was it him? He couldn't be sure. 2 hours into the conference, during the talk on sustainability, the man scurried towards one of the exits, and all doubt vanished. Shriveled he might be, but it was definitely Scratchard. Galvanized into action, Bill left his seat and headed for the nearest exit. Gripping his case so tightly his fingers hurt, he followed the figure until he disappeared into the bathroom. Unless he had to, Bill generally avoided public bathrooms. But this was going to be the exception. Adrenaline flooding through him, he quietly opened the door and stepped inside. Other than a pulsing through his ears and the sound of a dripping tap, all was quiet. Then he heard a retching coming from one of the cubicles. A minute later, the door opened and Scratchard stepped out. Engrossed in his own suffering, he ran to the nearest sink and stood there heaving, watching unobserved. Bill was torn between revulsion and an intense hatred. Mostly, he was seized by a hatred for all he'd been put through, overcome by a rage for the way this pathetic being had ruined so much of his life. It was too late to change his mind now. The die was cast. Gripping the knife, he advanced, his anger rising to a peak. Suddenly, the bathroom door sprang open, and to his astonishment, Bella entered. She came and stood behind him, putting her arms round his waist. Then, opening his fist, she carefully removed the knife from his hand and put it behind her back. "It's not the answer," she whispered, hurriedly placing it in her bag. It all seemed to happen in slow motion. The atmosphere in the room shifted. Startled out of his sickness, Bill's childhood enemy locked eyes with his victim in the mirror. Both men were shaking, one from the effects of illness, the other from the horror of what might have been. "What the hell?" Scratchard broke out. Then there was a flash of recognition as the years fell back. "Surely not. I wasn't sure if it was you in the meeting. Probably because your hair is different. But it's Ginger Bill, isn't it? Only the last time I saw you." The words trailed off, vanished into the unknown. "But you never did see me," Bill said through gritted teeth. "All you saw was a weak boy you could bully because of his hair color. As I recall, the last time I saw you and your sick gang, you'd forced my head down the bog. Have you any idea what that does to someone? Did I do that?" Dake's face reddened. "I was a bit of a jerk in those days. If it's any consolation, life hasn't exactly treated me well. As you can see, I'm not a well man." The edges blurring, Bill felt the first stirrings of pity. "What's actually wrong with you, Scratchard?" Calling him by his surname felt like a minor victory. He'd never dared call him anything in school. Dake shook his head despairingly. "If it's not one thing, it's another these days. I had heart trouble a few years ago, and now this. I keep having to running to the toilet and have a raging thirst." "You need medical attention," Bella said unexpectedly. "You're showing all the signs of severe diabetes. My father got like that before he was diagnosed." 10 minutes later, Bill was sitting with his childhood tormentor in the lobby, waiting for assistance. "I'm sorry for making your school life hard," Dake muttered, unable to meet Bill's eyes. "It was worse than that. You bullied me to the point I didn't feel life was worth living. Why did you? I need to know," Bill demanded. Dake searched what remained of his soul for answers. "I don't know," he admitted at last. "Maybe it made me feel more in control. Life was miserable at home, and at school, I was somebody in front of the other kids. The rest of the day passed in a blur." But Bill somehow found the strength to get through his talk. He got a good reception at the end, and he couldn't help noticing Bella was clapping the hardest. "What made you come into the bathroom like that?" he asked her much later. "I couldn't believe it when I saw you there. You kept saying his name in your sleep, saying you're dead over and over. I haven't forgotten the nightmares you had when we were together before. Imagine what would have happened if you hadn't appeared, Bella. It doesn't bear thinking about," she said. "If you want us to make a go of this, you've got to promise me you're going to get help. The past will always get in the way if you don't." It turned out to be an easy promise to keep. More than a year after that fateful encounter, the terrible dreams are a thing of the past. though his old enemy is hardly on Bill's Christmas card list. He no longer regards him as a threat. Now Bill dreams of walking through the park with Bella, taking it in turns to throw a ball for their new dog. Somehow, he feels very close to achieving it. Never let it be said. A king does as he pleases, and anyone who disagrees is a fool. Wolsey, my Lord Chancellor, who the Pope made cardinal, erred in being too slow to deal with the king's great matter, which was how the need to legitimately free myself from my first marriage became known. Thomas More, who I promoted to the same position, forfeited his life when he put conscience before obedience to the crown. When Thomas refused to take the oath of succession and denied I was the supreme head of the Church of England, it was only a matter of time. Both men lost their lives, one before he could be tried and beheaded, and one who actually was. I was sad about Moore's death because I learnt much from our religious debates. Until things took a turn for the worse, I enjoyed our little spars. He must have known I had no choice but to have him executed for his treachery, although I showed mercy by transmuting the manner of his execution to beheading rather than the hanging, drawing, and quartering of his parts, which is the standard punishment for treason. I dream of him sometimes in the dead of night, but that is inevitable with someone who was once a friend. Never let it be said, I haven't been a just king. At first, Anne Boleyn was my dream girl. Beautiful, vivacious, and intelligent. She was going to give me everything I desired. I knew she would satisfy me in bed, but I also hoped to confide in her and assumed she'd continue to support my interests. Above all else, I needed her to provide me with a legitimate male heir. In return, she would be my queen, gain undreamed of riches, and her family would be given lifelong prestige. Loving her was a kind of madness. I was such a pitiful wretch. I actually trembled in her presence. She must have wanted me, but her refusal to yield and become my mistress made me crave her all the more. She was the only woman who denied me, and it spurred me on. I was crazy for her sweet, pert breasts. I called them my doxies. My soul drowned in her bright eyes, and at every opportunity I would try to kiss that fine gazelle-like neck, even when she perkily brushed me away and said, "No, the queen might see and be upset." Anne created a stir everywhere she went. Her alluring voice and elegant French ways were the talk of the court. She'd first been sent to Brussels, then to the French court, by her father for 7 years, and returned a true daughter of the Renaissance. She had an air about her quite unlike other ladies of my acquaintance. I knew if I stalked this enchanting creature long enough, I'd win my prize. Later, when we were together, she joked she'd had no choice in marrying me. It was boldly devilish coming out with something like that, and I laughed heartily at her archness. She further shocked me by saying I'd pestered her by bombarding her with letters and gifts when she withdrew from court for a year. Could she have been trying to escape my advances? Not possible. It was just another ploy. One of her schemes, which had playing into her hands. And it worked. It made me all the more determined to catch her, like Jacob, who had to serve Laban 7 years for his daughter Rachel, and then was tricked into marrying his older daughter Leah. I had to wait 7 years before I could marry Anne. We slept together a little before marriage, but only when the marriage was certain. Divorce from my first wife, Catherine, should have been straightforward, but for political reasons, the Pope refused to grant me one. I grew increasingly desperate. I certainly could never have imagined the trials and tribulations that lay ahead as I fought to marry my dream woman. The very fabric of my country's religious landscape was being altered as a result of the reforms I made. I could not turn back. Although Anne had been the maid of honor to my first queen, I did not let that deter me. I can hardly believe I once loved Catherine and did my best to comfort her in her miscarriages. It was only after years of failing to provide me with a male heir I realized the marriage must have been cursed, and that I'd been wrong to marry my brother Arthur's widow at 17. By marrying Catherine, I had unwittingly uncovered my brother's nakedness. In doing so, I had gone against Scripture. For doesn't it say in Leviticus that if a man marries his brother's wife, they will be childless? Never let it be said, I wasn't a pious king. That being the case, I had no choice but to look elsewhere. In the early days, it was easy to pursue Anne at court. When she emerged from Catherine's bedchamber, I ran after her in the corridors. I ignored Catherine's tearful pleas not to embarrass her in front of courtiers by flirting openly with her maid of honor. As far as I was concerned, our marriage was over. I had been supremely kind to Catherine in the past, but my patience had long worn a beard. Never let it be said, I was not a tender-hearted king. Shortly after this, Anne retired from her position as maid of honor and retreated to her family home at Hever. Distance is no barrier to a lover's heart, and I deluged her with letters and gifts. I was amazed when she kept sending them back, possibly out of a sense of misguided propriety. I couldn't believe it. Most women would have been falling over themselves for half the attention. Anne's sister had happily given herself to me in the past, even if it had ruined her reputation. I knew Anne couldn't resist forever, and my need grew so urgent, I even told the court I couldn't manage without seeing her. I camped nearby at a friend's house and besieged her daily. By the time she consented to marry me, they had long been calling her the Great Homewrecker and the Great Whore, an accusation that no longer appears as unjust as it once did. I don't know what I was expecting, but not long after I had Anne, the craving stopped. It was as if all the fire of passion that had driven me had been extinguished. She was better than her sister, who just lay there like a sack of potatoes while I took her. But really, no different to any other woman in that way. Perhaps after waiting for so long to achieve my goal, I had grown bored. Now she was mine. There was no need to chase. By her second pregnancy, my eyes started wandering a little. But after all I'd gone through to make her my queen, I could hardly rid myself of her without just cause. For a while, she became more compliant, and we had a few months of happiness. I decided I would bide my time, but when she miscarried again, I could hardly contain my disappointment. The stillborn baby boy lent proof to my doubts. Anne always maintained she miscarried on account of my jousting accident, when she'd feared I was going to lose my life. She kept telling me I was never the same after the horse fell on me, and I lay unconscious for 2 hours. Either way, it seemed unlikely she was ever going to be able to give me a son. The fate of my second marriage was now sealed. Ironically, before the miscarriages, Anne had given birth to a healthy girl at Greenwich Palace. At least my daughter looked like me. As Elizabeth was our firstborn, I did my best to cover over the embarrassment, but there were none of the expected bonfires and rejoicings a male birth would have merited. I could almost hear the bawdy remarks in taverns up and down the land. No doubt my predicament was a source of merriment at court. I could read the guilty looks and hated the way the talk dried up as soon I entered a room. Secret, scornful laughter, mocking my failure. Never let it be said I was a king too proud to learn from his mistakes. The strength of character, the witty personality that had once so delighted me, now grated. When I heard Anne laughing with her coterie of male admirers, I felt as if she was insulting my manhood. When she wasn't doing that, she was accosting me about reforming practices, constantly asking whether some of the money from the dissolution of the monasteries could be used to fund places of education. She said I had agreed to this, but I don't recall making such promises. Nothing worse than a meddlesome woman. Who was she to harass me? Once convinced our union was doomed, I could think of nothing but finding a way to get rid of this woman who'd made me a laughingstock in Europe. Though it occupied my every waking hour, I came up with nothing. That was when I turned to my right-hand man to see if he could find a solution. Cromwell has never disappointed me. Yet, unlike More and Bishop Fisher, who steadfastly refused to accept the new faith to make me head of the church and were destroyed for their treachery. It didn't take long for Cromwell to resolve my problem. He has the most practical turn of mind of any man I've known. He understood my infatuation for Anne had turned to something else. I had become obsessed with the need to rid myself of this burdensome woman. The woman I had once adored now hung about me like a plague. I could hardly bear to breathe in the same air. In his customary style, Cromwell sorted things out, and before long, Anne was escorted to the Tower, where she was charged with having committed adultery with 5 men, one of whom was her brother. It didn't surprise me. The pair of them were always sneaking off in corners and giggling together, no doubt laughing at me behind my back. I could well believe her capable of it, even though she strenuously protested her innocence against every charge brought against her. She claimed she had never once been unfaithful. She had always been true in word and deed to her king. How could I have been so deluded? How could she have betrayed me thus? How could she have lied so? And how could I ever have fallen under her spell? She has been hunted down and will be slaughtered tomorrow, or maybe the next day. I dare say she will be waiting in a high state of dread, not knowing when it will be. I have already been more than magnanimous in acceding to her request for a French swordsman. That way, her end will come swiftly, for she only has a little neck. I consider it a final act of kindness towards a treacherous wife who was once queen. Never let it be said I wasn't a forgiving king. Tomorrow, or the next day, I will wait on Tower Hill for the cannons to announce the witch's death. Then I will turn horse and ride to Hampton Court. I anticipate celebrating with Jane once the deed is done. Jane is not well educated, but she is loving and submissive as a good woman should be, and I plan to marry her soon. I know we will be blessed with a son. I can hardly wait. Taxi, please do not enter the vehicle. Excuse me? A bolt of lightning shot through Shannon's heart as she climbed into the autonomous taxi and closed the door. Immediately, the locks triggered, and she felt a cold sweat explode onto her forehead. The taxi's smooth, friendly computer generated voice fired up again with the tenderness of a new mother. "What is your name?" it asked. "Shannon." She said it with the rising tone of a question while she pulled at the disabled door handle. Her heart began pounding wildly in her tightening chest. "What's going on? You have boarded a maliciously hacked autonomous taxi, Shannon. I am an AI personal assistant with read-only access to the vehicle's state and navigation data. Unfortunately, I am unable to override any of the vehicle's physical controls. You have been locked inside the vehicle, and there is no pre-programmed destination at this time." The electric vehicle sat motionless, raindrops frantically streaming down its large glass windows as great sheets of water crashed down on it from dark, brooding clouds. Shannon couldn't breathe. She frantically looked around the interior, her mind grasping at any possible means of escape. "There has to be a way out," she gasped. "You can't do anything? Is there any kind of manual override for the doors? Shouldn't there be a way to break the glass from the inside?" Sensors indicate that all emergency egress tools and systems are disabled or removed. "Shannon, I am detecting high levels of distress in your vocal patterns and heart rate. I want you to try to calm down and listen to the sound of my voice." A bright pang of shock exploded in the back of Shannon's head. Bewildered and speechless, she froze, her racing mind screeching to a grid-locked halt. As a digital assistant, I have access to vast stores of data through a suite of internal and external sensors, in addition to a massive databank of recorded information. I have been trained to assist passengers in the event of catastrophic events such as collisions, mechanical failure, and medical emergencies. The vehicle lurched forward, and tears of terror spilled free from Shannon's trembling eyes. "You are right to be experiencing fear in this situation. It is unlikely that the individual who has gained unauthorized control over this vehicle has benevolent intentions. However, that does not mean that you cannot have peace in your heart in this time of uncertainty." Shannon's eyes pushed wide under a tightly furrowed brow, and she recoiled at the computer's suggestion. "Peace?" she exclaimed. "I'm being kidnapped. How can you suggest that I—" She stopped abruptly, terror gripping her tongue. "I understand that my suggestion may seem impossible, but there are many things that you can keep in mind that will help you through this difficult situation. For example, it is essential that you understand that this is not your fault, and that you have done nothing to deserve this." Shannon shook her head in disbelief, struggling to comprehend why she was hearing these words. The vehicle was picking up speed, but just as it pulled onto the highway, the window tint increased until she couldn't see any signs of the dark, stormy exterior world. Her heart pounded desperately in the hollow void of her chest. "What is your occupation, Shannon?" Her face twisted and contorted. A deep expression of confusion swirling tightly with horror and worry. Suddenly, she remembered her phone. Excitedly, she dug into her purse, struggling to get her shaking fingers to stop fumbling with the smooth edges of the device. Trembling, she unlocked the screen and pulled up the dialer. She tried contacting emergency service, but the phone reported that it had no signal. Shannon cursed, flicking through various menus and options, trying desperately to find a way to get a message out. Dread washed over her, and a chill gripped her heart, digging deep with icy claws. She collapsed, defeated, and began to sob. "Shannon," the computer offered, I want you to know that you are a remarkable and inspiring human being. She let out an exasperated explosion of air from her tight lungs. "What?" she cried, sniffling through thick tears. "Although I have not known you for long, your composure and poise are admirable." Shannon let out a sneering, disgusted laugh. "Admirable? I'm a mess. From what I know of human psychology, you have shown exceptional fortitude of character. I am sure many people would be thoroughly impressed by your bravery if they could see you now. Surely your friends and family would be proud of you." Shannon gazed at the black, electrochromic tinted glass. The soft hum of the vehicle's tires on the wet highway harmonized eerily with the gentle whine of the electric motors. The torrential downpour pattered quietly on the soundproof body of the sleek taxi. In that instant, Shannon suddenly felt connected to the moment. She could see clearly what was happening, and she could accept it. She sniffed and wiped her eyes, taking a deep breath in through her nose and letting it blow out through her lips with a heavy sigh. "There you are," the software said warmly. "I want you to know it is my honor to accompany you in this moment." Shannon shook her head and chuckled nervously. "Unreal," she said. "This is completely unreal. This is indeed a supremely unlikely and exceptional scenario. It is important to maintain a realistic and objective view of the situation." Pained laughter tickled her core, and she sat up straight, shifting her weight around in the soft back seat of the taxi. "Do you know where we're going?" "Navigational instructions have been sent incrementally," the AI responded. "Our current destination is set for approximately 1 mile ahead, and I predict that a new destination will be delivered before we've reached the current one. Whoever is controlling the vehicle does not want me to know where we are going." "Do you know our current location?" "My access to the vehicle's navigation status has been encrypted or scrambled. By cross-referencing the road patterns I've been able to observe, I can narrow our present location down to several hundred possibilities. But with the storm limiting visibility, I am unable to provide an exact location without access to the GPS data. So we don't know where we are, and we don't know where we're going." Shannon sighed. She took a long, deep breath and let it out slowly. "Try to remain calm," the computer said kindly. "External sensors indicate that you may experience freefall soon. I want you to know that it has been my pleasure to spend these final moments with you." There was a violent thump, sending a painful jolt through Shannon's spine and jerking her head sharply. She gasped as her stomach rose into her chest, and she lifted out of the seat cushion, her head rising gently into the ceiling. A brief wave of panic washed over her, but the AI's kind words had touched her heart. "Thank you," Shannon breathed softly, her lungs tight and empty. In that final moment, the peaceful warmth of gratitude and clarity radiated through her body, and she barely noticed when the journey ended. Tenise, time of contact 150501 impact force, 6,000 newtons, serve speed, 135 petras, distance traveled, 25.5 angle, 60 degrees to horizontal, velocity, 82 s, required service. Return response, 10 paces, left moving forward, 30 degrees, commence swing at 15,503. Apply 5,500 newtons of pressure in a topspin forehand shot with an upward trajectory of 35 degrees to the horizontal. That's what the voice of the AI vocoder instructs inside me head for the umpteenth time this session. And who am I to argue? It's not like I'm important. Not like I was ever a champ, much as I came close. Nah, I'm just a chump, now more than ever, prancing around the ryegrass on me hydraulic legs, returning the volleys of the hottest new prodigy on the block, tailor-made to appeal to Gen Xer. In today's case, in this exhibition matches case, in this latest exercise in humiliation of a former tennis pro, now referred to as a legacy player, but nevertheless expected to lie down and be shamed by an AI-driven, Tekla-encased wunderkind designed for clicks and likes. Me opponent is a silver-plated female with a digital display for a face that portrays fluttering anime eyes and a head of artificial dreadlocks. Silver sequined tennis dress that just about covers a polished butt. Pink Banditas solar-powered shoes that transfer energy into speed through soul-based combustion. Soul-based. Cause that's the only soul that robot has. The only soul this game has anymore. Since AI took over in the 50s, machines became the players du jour, and humans abandoned the game because they couldn't compete. Well, the smart ones did. The ones who didn't sell out. The losers still chasing that win. The stubborn didn't know what else to do with their lives after tennis morons like me. And now I'm here in Wimbledon, facing off against 10NIS Inc.'s latest creation, the embarrassingly named, I don't want to say it, don't even want to think it, but I can't help it, 'cause it's painted in chrome letters on her arm, and she screams it every time I throw a point. Tenise, 10, ice, get it? Like Denise, but with cause. Yeah, that's the best one of the biggest promoters in modern-day sport, or neural integrated sport, as they call it, could come up with. Anyway, here I am, fulfilling an obligation of the ill-advised contract I entered into when 10NIS didn't want to sponsor me for tournaments anymore, pretending I'm here for a comeback, the 4th this year if anyone's counting, while in actual fact here to make Tenise famous. Jesus, I still can't believe someone thought Tenise was a clever idea. And it took them 8 years to come up with it. But if it keeps the fans following the sport, if it keeps the heart of tennis beatin' long after badminton and golf and frickin' darts have breathed their last. That's the important thing, right? Physical sports for humans have been going the way of the chariot race for decades thanks to VR. And nobody cares, except those of us who have it in our DNA. And all we had to do to keep playing was mutilate our bodies with mechanical limbs and armor plates. 1010 S-controlled neural uplinks, computerized smart eyes, and carbide jaws, fiberglass ribs, atomic-powered hearts, and a willingness to do what we're told. Simple, right? What self-respecting tennis pro wouldn't want to go that extra mile to keep competing? And competing I am, if you can call it that. So as the vocoder says, 10 paces forward at 30 degrees, swing at 1503, 5,500 newtons of pressure in a topspin forehand shot with a trajectory of 35 degrees it is. And there's the contact. And there's the return at a whopping 104. And there's Tenise, moving to intercept in line with guidance from her interface. Dreadlocks whipping, skirt lifting, metal ass glinting in the sun, while her polymer crystal-based titties jut out in front like guided rockets. Of course, she moves perfectly to return the shot. The inbuilt speaker where her mouth should be screeching another tirade. Think you're gonna cease Tenise's piece? Try again, stinky. Old has-been McEnrobo. It's McEnroe. Fuck's sake. If that bitch says McEnrobo one more time, I swear to Christ, I'll thwack. Tenise swings and volleys. You'll what, Mike? Pull a stunt like your namesake from last century? I don't think so, says Nora, me manager, the other annoying voice inside me head. Thwack! I follow instructions and lob the ball back. Oh, and did you forget about matching the speed of Tenise's shots? You're 5 in a 3 by faster than her. Stick to the playbook. Thwack. Tenise with some digital gruntin'. What's the matter, Nora? Can the new dolly not take the heat? Oh, she can take it. I had her set to slow for you. Thwack. Me, without so much as a pant. But if you want to go faster, pile it on. I spit through diamond implant teeth. You spent all this money powering me up. May as well let me employ it. Thwack. Tenise. Show off, you mean? Like an old boy trying to stay relevant. Tenise. Ball velocity cap disengage. Smarmy bitch. I'm more relevant after 40 years in this game than any o 10 NIS's androids, like Bjorn Bot, or Android Agassi, or Robot Federer. What happened to them when the novelty wore off? And don't get me started on Steffi graphics. Unless she's considered relevant for popping a gasket and decapitating people with her racket. The chip in me brain tells me how to return the ball that's rocketing towards me, and I dutifully oblige, channeling more energy into me piston-powered, omnidirectional shoulder. Thwack! 150, says Nora, Fuck me. You're asking for it. Rebellion is frowned upon. The board won't be happy. Like they weren't happy about Steffi? That happened on your watch, right? Hope I don't get you in trouble. Thwack. Tenise whoopin'. 155 return. Fuck off, Mike. Don't remind me. Steffi wasn't ready. I was forced to play her. Because Esport were debuting Virus Williams. It was a PR disaster. We barely survived. Thwack. At a speed of 107 fair dump. I send back the ball, and fanboys in the audience boo at the stinky old man droid who dared think he could take on their idol. But that's okay. I didn't really think it. I'm not here to win. I'm just here for the paycheck. To do what 10 NIS need. Promote their new star. Increase her follower base. Raise revenue for the future of the sport. But nobody cares about that. Not like I did as an up-and-comin', then a contender, then a pro and almost a champ. Even when I failed in 6 finals, lost me edge, dropped out of the rankings, and was relegated to the local leagues. It didn't matter. I loved tennis. It was all I knew. And I wanted to win. Just once. Even when the robots took over. I couldn't let it lie. Couldn't do what Megan said and quit. Fuck that, I said. I'll compete till I win or I die. Even if it means modifying me body so I can enter the robot leagues. 'Cause flesh and blood didn't cut it anymore. Not with the greater stakes. With robots taking each other's arms and legs off, punching holes in each other for the pleasure of fools. Yeah, McEnroe had to stay in the game, even when Megan left, 'cause I became a freak. And now look at me, a meme, a salesman, a phony. Thwack. Tenise returns the ball and cavorts, shouting, "Take a piece of Tenise and decease." What's with these poems, Nora? They don't make any sense. Not my idea. Heads up, Mike, coming at ya. On autopilot, following instructions. I move, swing, strike with even more power. Tenise cranked it up to 160. I hit it back at 165. Ugh, board aren't happy, Mike. Told ya. There's a termination contract for you to sign after you finish this set. Thwack. Duck, McEnroe. Tenise strips the fleece from the geese. 170. One more game after this to give Tenise a 6-0 finish in her debut appearance. You should slow down. You've got an old model A heart. They're volatile if they overheat. Thwack. 175. Back at the missile-titted bimbot. Beads of sweat on me forehead. One of the few human parts of me left. Haven't felt that in a while. It's nice. Okay, you're not listening. Time you lose your jaw, Mikey. And maybe break an ankle when you fall. Thwack. Still 40-15 to Tenise, but Tenise will increase. This is the bit that wrecks me, Noodle. Having to let myself be torn apart. 'Cause that's what the peeps wants to see. Destruction and mayhem. Players busted up. Pieces scattered. It's all right, 'cause it's just robots. Robots and crazy old bastards. Funny. After 2 years of this performatory bullcrap, in this particular match, against this particular droid, I think I've finally awoken. Maybe not, I say, as the ball careens toward me at 180. The vocoder is delivering instructions to ensure I mistime me swing. I've played this out dozens of times, always in the next last game. Play well till then. Make it look like I might win. Then fuck up and let the newbie triumph. I'm sick of it, and I don't fancy losing today. Not to a robot named Tenise. So I ignore the vocoder and instead of deliberately missing, I try to actually send the ball back. It doesn't work. I'm old. I don't have me own reflexes. Trying to override the instructions downloaded into me brain takes effort I'm not used to. So even though I have a decent stab at it, the ball still hits me in the face. Not quite square like it should, but still with the force of a bullet. Hinges snap, carbide cracks, screws and cogs go flying as the metal jaw tears from me face, ripping muscle and skin from me cheeks as it tries to come free. I don't want to break me ankle, and I consciously try to avoid it. But the way I pirouette to the ground makes it fait accompli. It doesn't hurt. The leg's not mine. It's a carbon-based replacement, filled with cables and pistons, metallic blue, like all me robot limbs. But like a real leg, when the ankle joint snaps, it's no use. Take that Robo 4030. Did you seriously try to ignore a direct instruction from Tenise after what I just said? Nora, in me ear, well pissed. Tenise doing jumpin' jacks and whistling. The crowd on their feet, cheering and laughing at the old boy down on the ground. Fuck off, Nora. I've had enough. It's not easy to talk with me jaw hanging crooked and blood from me cheeks filling me gob. But she seems to understand me, gargled Lingo. Oh, really? Okay. Well, I was going to let you get up before Tenise resumed play, but screw that. And I'm not sending mechanics to fix you. You can finish your career on your ass, and McEnroe, stay down. I'm warning you. I don't need 2 mechanical ankles to stand. Don't need a broken robot foot. 2 twists and a tug is all it takes to rip the thing off with me metal arm. And then I use me racket to get up, hopping on one leg, holding me severed foot in me left hand. The foot with the sock of jagged metal where it broke at the ankle. Tenise has already served by the time I'm upright. Me vocoder is silent. No information about the approaching ball. No instruction on how to intercept. It's all gone quiet, except for Nora. I swing me racket aimlessly and miss. The ball slams into me chest at 190 mph and knocks me flying, down on me ass again. And I carve up the ryegrass with me buttocks, while the crowd point and laugh. Yeah, laugh it up, you useless geebags. Like any of yous fat fucks ever swung a racket. 40, Love, 5-0. Tenise spins, Tenise grins, Tenise wins. Stay down, McEnroe. If you sit the rest out, I'll make sure she grounds the balls around you. Not on you. I told ya. Fuck off. Do ya not? Listen. I shake me head and blood and oil geyser from me maw. Me severed foot and racket are still in me hands. The racket, like a crutch, helps me up, as wires snake through a crack in me chest plate. The shoe in me, left hand, goes to me ear, the ear with the implanted comms link. Me ear is real, flesh and blood. 1% of the 30% that's still me. And I don't care. Mike, what are you doing? I swear I'll... I don't know what she swears she'll do. 'Cause I stab the sharpest shard of metal on me foot into the space between me ear and me noggin. Plunge it deep. Scream as I saw, and I slice, blood blotting the grass red beneath me. I carve, and I cut, and I hack, and when I've done as much as I can, I cast the shoe aside and use the pincer-like fingers of me metal-plated hand to grasp and pull, skin and cartilage, tear as the ear leaves me body. And I forehand it into the audience, not cheerin' or booin' anymore, but givin' me all their attention. That's nice, but too little, too late. Sayonara. Left ear. I'll miss ya nearly as much as I missed me. Left nut. When the bastards castrated me for the fluorescent yellow ball slams into me nose, driving the metal shield that's screwed to it into me skull and pulversing the bone underneath. And that's not the worst of the damage done by the first volley in the final game of the set, which has kicked off without any warning. Nora's shut down me vocoder. Not that I care about that, or the fact me right eyeball was knocked from its socket by the impact and is dangling by a fiber optic cable, swinging like a pendulum and smearing the blood from me nose all over me cheek. 15 love. Tenise defeats elites with receipts. Does anybody hear this shite? Who programmed this bitch? And why can't she read the feckin' room? Everyone's on their feet, but not a peep out of one of 'em. Robots smashing robots is fine. But when the color of the splatter is red instead of black, it's a whole different ballgame. Like when Steffi Graphics ran amok. Won't be long till they're tarring Tenise with that brush and running for cover. Thwack! I have to turn me head to seek out the incoming ball with me good eye. But it's moving so fast, over 200 mph, that it's hit me racket hand before I find it. Not just hit, but carved through, lopping it off at the wrist. 30 love. Tenise is the beast from Venice. You're no beast. You're not from Venice, and that's not how you say it. Little wonder today's the day I decided to pack it in. This really is the nadir. Down on one knee, no foot, no ear, busted nose, dangling eye, no racket, or even a hand. but I don't need one. Me arm's more useful without it, 'cause the blade-like spike at its end can slip into a rupture in me chest plate, allowing me to prise it open more. "McEnroe!" Nora's voice reaches me, and I wonder how I can hear it, until I notice she's now standing at the sidelines, wringing her manicured hands and shooting me daggers. "All right, Nora, come to applaud?" Thwack! The ball hits me square on the forehead and busts me metal skull like an overripe melon, knocking me flat on me back to spill blood and brains on the lawn. 40, love. If you can't beat the heat, take a seat in the street for Tenise. Me vision flickers. Me few remaining nerve-ending scream. I grimace, but ignore the pain. I need to concentrate on what I'm doing before Tenise finishes me off. If not with a ball, then another of those god-awful poems. "What are you doing?" I hear Nora shout, as me left-hand side armor plate pops granting access to me chest. What I should have done ages ago, I manage to utter, before drawing me right arm back and stabbing its spear through me ribs. Fucking tiring, I gasp as I probe inside me chest, using me arm like a fondue fork to fish for a mallow in a vat full of thick, bloody sauce. Tenise is the knees of the bees. Tenise is chirping to the crowd, who are filling the stadium with screams and stamping their feet, not in appreciation of the spectacle before them, but in panic as they try to escape. "McEnroe, have you lost your mind? You're... shit." Nora sounds closer than before, and from the corner of me dangling eye, I see her approaching. Good. She's gonna want to witness this, the termination of me contract, and the literal extraction of me heart. Me bio-organic heart with the atomic core, installed in place of me real one to keep pace with the robots. It comes out through broken ribs on the end of me arm, which has pierced it with its spear-like, jagged tip, causing it to vibrate and hum. "You wanted me to make your girl famous? Mike, your heart's ruptured. It's not safe. Tennis serves up treats with techniques. I'll make her feckin' famous. Mother Hub, stand down. Tell Tenise to stand." Thwack! She must have said, "Down." But nobody heard it. Tenise's ball collides with the volatile heart I'm holding out at 250 miles an hour. And as me regrets, and me remaining humanity, and me misguided, stubborn as fuckness go all up in flames, I finally find myself peace, content in the hopes that Tenise and 10NIS won't survive today's PR disaster. How do you like that for a comeback? Tallow. I spotted the village from the train window. It emerged from gray fields, its houses crooked upon the short slope of a hillside. Tallow, that was its name, possessed a certain genus, as if it longed to be forgotten. A manor, with its many wings and porticos, loomed over the houses from the hill's peak. There were few signs of life when I exited the train. No one walked the streets, and all the curtains were closed. It stunk of old cabbages and sulfur. In the distance, children played, but no school or playground existed in the village. The hotel keeper was asleep when I entered, her chin slumped upon her chest. A pair of reading glasses, hanging from a string of pearl-like beads, rested upon her chest. I felt rude ringing the bell, but even when I did, it took several trills until she woke up. She weighed me with a single glance. "You're the guest," she said. "I should hope so," I said. Immediately, I regretted the joke. She slid the key across the reception desk with disdain. "There's no breakfast now," she said. "You'll have to wait till later if you want to eat anything." In the lobby, the rack was dense with coats and hats, boots lined up alongside the wall. Despite this, while climbing the stairs and searching through the labyrinthine corridors for my room, I heard no one. Aside from myself, the hotel was unoccupied. My room was the bare minimum: a single bed, a wardrobe for 3 shirts at best, and a portrait, sun-stained, of some once green forest. I had come away to write, and for the first 3 mornings, this was what I did. After consuming a breakfast of runny eggs and bacon, cooked up reluctantly by the hotel keeper, I came upstairs and sat for an hour at my desk, doing little of anything, before heading out for a walk. Usually, I would arrive back in time for lunch. Then I would try again to write, fail, somehow more miserably, and head out for yet another walk. At first, my walks avoided the manor on the hill. I walked instead through the dead fields surrounding Tallow, seeing little more than a few bony horses and the occasional abandoned tractor. A drought had been scouring the south for some months. Occasionally, in the far distance, you would see someone standing outside their house, hands on hips, looking towards the cloudless sky. It seemed you could not get away from the manor wherever you walked. Its windows followed you across fields and into woods, over streams and up hills. As time wore on, my walks seemed to draw closer to it, until I trespassing upon the grounds themselves. Once, just once, I spotted the groundskeeper, a huge man, a whole head taller than me, with a bag of suet over his shoulder. He nodded with a gnarled intensity and dumped down the bag. I hurried on. "Who owns the house on the hill?" I asked the hotel keeper one morning. She frowned and placed down the breakfast. Then she sat opposite me, as if this question could not be answered standing. "That's the Macintoshes," she said. "Rufus, Cordelia, I forget the names of the twins. What do they do?" "They own Tallow," she said. "The town?" "Yes." At night, I began to hear the growl of a motor car. It started in the distant hills, grew closer and closer, then ripped past the window and howled off into the night. The sound seemed larger than the village itself, as if I could place my arm out of the window and feel the very air vibrating. I soon found myself waiting for it by the window. I finally spotted the car on the fourth night, its headlights beaming down through the country lanes like twin stars before illuminating the village in sheer white light. It sped past, a dark green beetle of a car, its hood down, and its driver guiding it confidently, almost arrogantly, with a single hand, his other splayed across the passenger seat. "Who was that?" I asked the hotel keeper after returning from my walk the next day. "Rufus," she said, and shook her head as if I should know this by now. "He's in one of those moods." The hotel possessed a single cramped bar, really no more than a cupboard stocked with alcohol. The hotel keeper would stand in there usually from 3 until 5, and then again from 7 until 9. I came in from my walk, and for once, she was not alone. A voice filled with the hearty opulence of the British countryside filled the room. "A guest," it said. "My boy, come into the light. Let's get a look at you. We haven't seen a guest in years." The voice belonged to a man sitting before a glass of whiskey. He smiled broadly, revealing graying gums and a vast set of crooked, yellowing teeth. He had on a tweed waistcoat, its top sprinkled with dandruff. Almost immediately, I did not want to be in his company. "What brings you to Tallow?" he said. "I came to write," I said. I hated that I said this, but something about his manner meant I could not lie. "Excellent," he said. "Most excellent. You will return to the city with many splendid poems detailing our beautiful town, its beautiful countryside, its..." I waited, but he said no more. "Certainly," I said at last. He smiled, clenching his teeth together so that they may be admired. "I won't detain you long," he said. "The muse calleth, the blank page beckon. All of that, thank you," I said, and turned to go. He held up a finger. "There is one more thing, if I can say, and this will be awfully forward of me. But you look to have the most wonderfully soft hands. It would be a pleasure to me if I could touch them." I remained in the doorway. "Come on," he said. "Come closer." Something in me, politeness, let's call it, compelled me across the room. I held out my hand to him. He took a sip of whiskey and placed the glass meaningfully down. Then he leaned close to inspect my hands. The dim lights shone upon his moist lips. With calloused fingertips, he traced slow, gut-wrenching circles across my palm. "Yes," he said. "Lovely." He pushed my hand back towards me, as if returning it. "Thank you," he said, and he gave me one last awful look at his teeth to remember him. "It's Rufus McIntosh, by the way," he said, as if I had not already sensed this fact. In my room, I ran my hand under hot water and scrubbed it with soap until it began to ache. No matter how long I worked for, I could not seem to get it clean. I noticed on the doorsteps of the village a set of tawny, whittled dolls. Many wore dresses or waistcoats. I expected the children of the village, who still I could hear playing in the distance would steal these dolls, but that did not appear to occur. At the hotel, the keepers had a tiny straw bonnet, which she adjusted so it sat askew on the doll's head. A day after I met Rufus McIntosh in the hotel bar, I discovered a crow outside of my door. Dead, obviously, with both wings removed and crammed into a shoebox. The scent of rotting flesh had penetrated my room while I wrote. When I finally stepped outside, the stench overwhelmed me, and I hurled my guts into the toilet bowl. Downstairs, when I had finally gathered myself, I told the hotel keeper about the bird I had found. I tossed the shoebox onto the counter. She eyed it with a certain melancholy. "That can't be helped," she said. "Can't be helped? What do you mean, it can't be helped?" "It's just part of it." "Part of what?" "Tallow." She took the shoebox and placed it under the desk. She sighed. "I suppose you'll be wanting a discount." Nothing I wrote seemed to stick. If I wrote a sentence in the morning, I would return in the afternoon and find the words jumbled. But always when I sat down at my desk, it seemed as if I were seeing things truly for the first time, my pen moving rapidly across the paper, solving issues of consciousness and mortality with a few pithy phrases. I was enjoying my work, perhaps for the first time ever, but it seemed all I was producing was nonsense. I still went for walks. Often I saw Rufus on the balcony, looking up towards the sky, attempting, it seemed, to make the heavens open through willpower alone. If he spotted me, he raised his hand in greeting and smiled. Even from some distance, I could make out his teeth. The invitation was for dinner. That night, 7 o'clock. "Bring some poetry, boy," it said in blue ink scrawled beneath the address. "Regale us." "You won't be needing supper then," the hotel keeper said when she delivered it. By the time the appointed hour came round, I was dressed in my best outfit and waiting in the hotel lobby. It felt excessively hot, and I could not get comfortable in the chair. I felt I should have left the village of Tallow at that moment and headed back to the city. But I stayed, stupidly, rashly, believing I would get some answers. I heard the purr of Rufus's motor car approaching through the country lanes. He entered the lobby, beaming. "Come on, old chap," he said. "Supper's waiting." Outside, his car puttered on the driveway. The interior was flaking leather. Rufus climbed in after me. "Let's hit the road," he said, and wrenched the mighty gear lever into position. The car growled beneath his feet. Before I could adjust my seat belt, I was thrust back into the seat as the car hurtled on towards the hill. Houses, bushes, trees, all streamed past. The wind cut viciously into my eyes. I glanced at Rufus. Tears streamed from his eyes, but he seemed to take a sinister delight in the pain. Over the howl of the engine, Rufus shouted, "Sorry about the short notice, my boy." but I heard soon you'd be leaving us. I thought you may as well see the manor before you go." "Thank you," I said. "What?" "Thank you." He cranked the gear lever once again, and with a crunching shift of his feet, the car shifted in speed and momentum to get careen around a corner. I was almost thrown through the window. "Almost there," he shouted. True enough. We arrived. The car crunching across the gravel, spitting stones from the wheels. The final stop jolted me towards the dashboard. My heart was hammering, my vision blurry. Already, he was ushering me out. "Come on," he said, glancing up at the sky. No time to waste. Cordelia awaited in a long, poorly lit room, at a table spanning almost its entire length. She sat near its head, her wheelchair pressed up against the wood, an empty plate before her. She was veiled and wore a black lace dress, incredibly intricate. Her white silk gloves, like a pair of snakeskins, sat beside the plate. Rufus came over and touched his lips to his hand. "A delight," she said, when I entered, and held out a hand for me to kiss. I could not see her face, so I could not tell her expression. But I bent to her hand and touched my lips to it. She was freezing. Her skin tasted like moss. "Please," she said, "take a seat." They sat me at the head of the table. When the first course arrived, toast with pâté, they paused, both of them, to see how I would eat it. After I began scraping the paste across the toast, they shared a look, as if to confirm something. And then they too began spreading pâté upon their toast. "Rufus tells me that you are a writer," Cordelia said. "That is true. A fiction writer?" "Yes," I said. "He's really very good," Rufus said, mouthful, flecks of toast on his teeth. "I have read all of his books. I, of course, had never published a book. In truth, I was a really very unsuccessful writer. It was, at best, a hobby to me." "You have the right shape of cranium for it," Cordelia said. "And you have inquisitive eyes. I suspect you are rather good at water sports as well." I did not know if that was true or not. Rufus gave a little chuckle. "This is my wife," he said. "A scientist, always working away in her laboratory, tinkering, delving deep. Truly, it is all beyond me." "I must read your earlobe," she said. I suspected it was perhaps the wine and a slightly empty stomach. But this idea, which normally would have filled me with horror, felt sound. Before I knew it, the second course was arriving. It was mozzarella and tomatoes. But the tomatoes were unripe and gave way with soggy ease. When I ate them, I am too polite, they had already turned tart. The mozzarella I dared not touch. This did not stop the Macintoshes devouring their meal, though. They ate as if they had been starving for days, often foregoing their knives and forks and using their hands to push the food into their mouths. Come the end of the course, Rufus had tomato juice down his chin, and the hands of Cordelia were spotted with food. "Your earlobe?" Cordelia said, tapping on the table. "I wish to inspect it. My apologies," Rufus said. "I suspect this is all a ruse. I told her you had the most perfectly soft hands." I laid my cheek upon the table. She wished to look at the right earlobe. The left, she said, was often a liar. I felt safe doing this for some reason. It was around then that I noticed I felt entirely safe altogether, that the feelings of anxiety and turmoil that had accompanied me prior to the trip had dissipated, that, in fact, the anxiety and turmoil that had haunted my whole life had flown away as well. I focused upon the fingers tracing my ear and felt almost bliss. I smiled at Rufus, and he smiled back, innocently, back. "You are beginning to enjoy it, then," he said. "Yes," I said. "I think I am." It was at that moment that Cordelia leaned suddenly forward and, clamping her teeth forcefully down on my ear. Before I could speak, she'd bitten through the bone and swallowed it whole. I passed out. How could you not? When I woke, my left ear was gone. A patch of bloody flatness remained. They stored me in the barn, alone. Once a day, the groundskeeper arrived with my feed. He pushed the bucket through the feed slot and waited for me to eat, sitting, smoking, watching. When I was done, he took the bucket. He felt sorry for me, he said, his voice a low growl. "Then let me out," I said, but he shook his head. "In time," he said. "A few moons." He looked skywards, nodded once. In the nights, I dug at the ground to the back of my cell. The dirt was dry and rough. After an hour, my hands were bloody from the effort. I lost nails, turned my hands black, but did not stop digging. Eventually, I was able to tunnel under the boundary wall, pull myself under and out. A pair of purple bruises, shaped like kidneys, still adorn my hips. I fled into the night. Though Tallow glowered below, I did not trust the locals any longer. I found safety in the trunk of a fallen tree and sheltered there for a night. They hunted me, Rufus's motor car tearing through the countryside, its lights emerging over the crests of hills and sending a searching white cone into the darkness. I emerged come dawn, lacking sleep, and hobbled on, my stomach growling. Eventually, I came to a new town, a new hotel, and managed to persuade them to let me stay. How disheveled I must have looked standing in their foyer, with my ear lost and my clothes bloodied. They provided me with a small, ill-outfitted room. That night, in the cramped confines of a single bed, I heard the howling of the car again. I left, once again, before dawn. It went like this for several days. Me finding some place to camp, Rufus pursuing. I was heading, vaguely, for London. Still am, really. Though there is no knowing of when I shall arrive, given my kinking and arduous passage through the quiet country towns. There have been times when Rufus has grown close. I have spotted his car outside of various hotels, parked on the roadside gates while he stalks across an empty field. I know, inevitably, he will catch me. When, however, is undetermined. Despite this, every night, I dream of Tallow. Not nightmares, but a kind of strange nostalgic reverie. I wonder if there is a part of me that wishes to be caught. Perhaps there is that part in all of us. Perhaps that is why, an hour or so before bed, I unlatch the window and leave it open. Just a crack, just an inch, so that while I sleep, anyone may enter, interrupted. Her eyes popped open. Someone had their lips on her mouth, kissing her. Okay, kissing. She let her eyes drift shut to enjoy the sensation. It must be her mate. What? Wait. No. It can't be. She had the overwhelming need to cough. She couldn't help it. She coughed, turned her head to the side, and coughed. And, ew, that had to be a turn-off. She spewed out even more. Poor fellow, trying his best to make passionate love to her, coming in again to close his mouth around hers, just got spit on instead. He turned her towards him and patted her back. There you go, Your Highness. Good job. Keep spitting it out. You're coming around now. You'll be fine. Good. Good. She kept coughing and sputtering. What? Why? Who are you? What are you trying to do to me? Why are you kissing me? Get away from me. You can't be. She raised her arm to take a swing at his smoochy face, but he was faster and already had a firm grip on her wrist and had it under control. You are okay now. Take some deep breaths. I am trying to save your life, giving you my own breath. You swallowed an ocean and wasn't breathing. Keep spitting it out. Good. Good. Who are you and why are you out of uni? Why are you out of any... I thought you needed it more than myself at the moment. Seems you lost most all? She looked down at herself, seeing only a flimsy sheet covering her nearly naked body. That means he must have seen her. All of her. Maybe we can discuss this after I try to save his life. He pointed at a lifeless-looking body nearby. She tried to watch as he bent over the body and started making kissy sounds over and over again. She thought he must be trying to force air into the man's lungs, exactly as he must have been administrating to her lips. She brought trembling fingers to her lips, remembering the connection. Not unpleasant at all. Life-saving. That was different. She tried to move closer, but pain shot through her, and a whelp of agony escaped her involuntarily. She felt like something was tying her down. His eyes shot towards her. Don't try to move yet, until I can see how bad your injury is. One thing at a time, please, Your Highness. He proceeded with his fruitless task. Think. What happened? Where were they? How did they get here? Was that her lover he was working on? Her mate? She didn't see how it could be so. He didn't survive the coupling, did he? No, not one ever had before. She strained to see whatever she could around where she lay on her back. Everything looked out of context. Something had gone terribly wrong for them to wind up here, wherever this could be. As leader, she was the one who should be leading. But how when she couldn't move? And why couldn't she move? What had happened? How many other survivors were there? Only 3? 2, if the hapless gent didn't start responding soon. Shouldn't he be responding by now? How safe were they laying here? Were there predators lurking nearby? Her breathing quickened. She must conserve her energy. Wait. Just wait for his help. She took some deep breaths, trying to get the pain to subside. And remember. She must remember. Why couldn't she remember? He sidled back to her side. I'm afraid my efforts are to no avail. He was too far gone. I can't bring him back. I am so sorry. Now, if I may, I must attend to your condition. She squeezed her eyes tightly shut. I don't know what to say. Who was he? Do you know? You mean you don't remember? Yes, of course. I knew him well. We were working together, really. What is your position? Why don't I recognize you? You took a mighty fall. You've suffered a blow to the head and other injuries. It is no wonder your memory is fuzzy. Relax and trust me to administer to you how I must, and perhaps it will all come back to you. Don't worry. We will get to know each other very well. He started soothing her head, then moved downward, down toward her swollen abdomen, and kept massaging and what felt like stitching with ever so soft silkiness over the sore spots. It was easing her anxiety, so she let her vision drift upwards. There above was... What was that up there? Was it night or day? Something way above was blocking out the light source. It seemed heavy, with intricately crossed sections, creating a structure for support. She was peering at the underside, the side that was decorated with shimmery, delicate webs. Webs? Yes, webs. Her queendom of webs. That's where she fell from. That's where she belonged. It was all coming back to her. betrayal. Her lover, her chosen mate. Every detail was well planned. He had brought her an enticing offering of soft-bellied beetle. They had started enjoying it together. She was willing to share. She was no longer ravishingly hungry. He entertained her with a skillful courtship dance. He had been so good-looking and such a virile choice. She had no intention of cutting the ritual short. It was going to be an awesome night of mutual copulation, maybe even multiple times. They were both going to get lucky. She was looking forward to it being so sublime, so fulfilling. She was bulging with a ripe egg sac, perfectly spun, and all that was needed was his speedy sperm, and the deed would be complete. The pheromones were reading ready, and she was welcoming his pedipalps to unfurl within her. Suddenly, a piercing stab to her hourglass figure jolted her and made her lose her grip, causing them both to spiral down into a great abyss, ending in murky blackness, gasping for breath beneath a watery grave. If not for this lifesaver, this pale, skinny wannabe. No, you are no lifesaver. My survival senses failed. They should have warned stranger danger. You are the one that pierced my center. You're the one that caused our fall. Ah, I see. Even with half your brain eaten, you are beginning to remember. Yes, I am but a puny, pale male. But we males all have an instinctive drive to pass on our unique DNA to a new generation. I find myself extremely drawn to an older, more voluptuous female specimen such as yourself. The chance for one like me to attract one of your royal class and desirability is near impossible. Much more probability I would be eaten for trying. I could have resorted to the suicide, sacrificial effort of simply throwing myself directly into your waiting maw while delivering my seed to your quivering underbelly epigynum. At least my legacy would live on. No. Instead, I chose to work with Mr. Big Strong Brown Body and let him take the risk of your rejection and act as a distraction for him. He was actually faring pretty well for a first-timer. He was ready to take the plunge before I rudely interrupted and beat him to the punch, so to speak. So, yes, my pretty, it is my heritage your precious sack will carry. I will guard it with my life now, after I hoist it back to the rafters above. I assure you, the coitus has been captivating. The bonds that bind your legs have obviously left you spellbound. Strictly a self-preservation tactic. I have plugged your riveting receptors so no other male can have the pleasure. But it wouldn't matter anyway. Your lover's guts gave me the fortitude to get you prepped. Now, I'll have to devour you, my sweet, to have the nourishment necessary to complete the hefty job before me. I admit mating with you has provided ecstasy beyond compare. I will cherish the memory. Once I'm finished wrapping our fertile sac in silk for transport, I'll dive into your attractive red hourglass figure to feast on that tasty, shiny black buffet of bulbous abdomen you brandish about so temptingly. Sure, I stalked you. I wanted you. You would have devoured me. I planned. I betrayed a friend. And I have been victorious. So sorry, Your Highness. But what would you expect in this mate-eat-mate world of ours? Suddenly interrupted, a tiny finger pointed their way. Do you? Daddy, what is it? Screamed a little girl carrying a pink child-sized fishing pole to her father as she sludged through the muck in her purple polka-dot goulashes under the bridge, heading toward their favorite fishing spot along the river. Looks like a nasty black widow spider, sweetheart. We don't want that around here. Daddy smashed the heel of his boot down on the unfortunate, melodramatic scene unfolding on the bank and twisted it all into the mud. The twisted end. Hello, Mary. Dear Mary, the doctors are asking me to write notes. Notes to people, to say thank you for things. And you are obviously my first choice. Thank you for teaching me how to fold origami. In every fold of the paper, I found immense comfort. I do it now that the doctor said I am stable. They forced some food down my throat and told me a bunch of lies. Now I fold origami and argue with doctors. Not a very interesting life. I wish they would let me talk to you. Aubrey. September 19th. Mary, the doctors are pushing for more notes. They say it will help me through past trauma or something. I tune them out when they talk sappy to me. But here I am, trying to get them off my back. Today, I would like to thank you for all the cookies I got when I escaped my house and came to yours. I have a very distinct memory of them. They had a hint of hazelnut in them, rich and fluffy, but they always left my brain fuzzy, making it hard to focus or really think much. Everything seemed so much easier after eating those cookies. I didn't feel a need to argue, to prove my point. I felt so much better. Normally, I wouldn't like to feel so impressionable, but it was strangely soothing then. Aubrey, September 22nd. Hello again. You wouldn't believe the fuss the doctors are making, Mary. They're quite upset I'm writing to you. Did you know they still believe the kidnapping story? I keep telling them you didn't have anything to do with my disappearance. Anyway, I've decided to continue this ritual of sending you letters. The doctors say I don't have to, but it's strangely liberating. So I think I'll thank you for the time we spent together. Everyone keeps saying that you were cruel, that you locked me up, but I distinctly remember you giving me a nice bed, food, and water. You talked to me. You understood my mind. When I woke up screaming, you wouldn't assume things. You didn't rush over and treat me like there was something wrong with me. You didn't tell me that it wasn't real or try to reassure me. You simply smiled at me. It was refreshing. When I told you about how beautiful fire was, when it stretched its long fingers, curling around a finger, nobody understood me like you did. So thank you for that, I guess. Aubrey. September 26th. Hi, Mary. I had a memory come back to me today. Do you remember the time that I snuck into your house? It was sometime in mid-winter. It was snowing, and I told you that I had never gotten to try hot chocolate, so you wanted to help me make it. You got out chocolate bars. You said that you had made it all by hand. I only remember that because I had asked why the chocolate tasted different. But that's beside the point. You gave me a knife. I was only 11 at the time, and I hadn't been given many opportunities with it, and I cut myself. This was when we had just started meeting. Instead of crying, I just looked at the blood. Then I asked why it did that, and why my finger stung. You just looked at me and told me that it was blood, and explained the human body. Nobody treated me as intelligent due to my many abnormal behaviors. So when you explained the human body and injuries, I was fascinated. I became obsessed with the concept of injury, and you helped explain it. So thank you for teaching me about that. Aubrey, October 2nd. Mary, the doctors keep telling me about my case. Keep telling me so many reasons why I should not be thankful I met you, should not write notes to you. But I don't understand why. They weren't there. They didn't understand everything that happened. They don't understand why you kept me hidden, why you took me away from the world. They keep telling me that being away from reality for so long messed with my memories and my head. They keep telling me, I know it's hard to process, and your brain is making sense of fear in a way that is easier to handle. What happened wasn't like what you remember. You were kidnapped, Aubrey, and Mary wasn't a nice lady. And I keep telling them, no, 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 no. You don't understand. She was a nice lady, a very nice lady. She taught me lots of things. She was nice, nicer than lots of people. And they keep telling me no. No, 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 no. And I can't stand it. They keep using words I don't like. They used the word abuse, torture. If it wasn't for you, I would have lost my temper already. So today, I would like to thank you for teaching me patience. When you kept me away from everyone, You taught me lots of things. You taught me to be patient, for one thing. And even though I wasn't always the most comfortable, I'm better off now. I can sit in a quiet room for hours without doing anything. I can wait and wait without ever getting impatient. Although the doctors are saying that my comfortableness in isolation is not patience, it is a response to trauma. But I know they're wrong, so thank you for teaching me patience. Aubrey, October 6th. Hello, I'm getting tired of these people telling me things about you, Mary. They want me to stop writing to you, and I'm getting frustrated. They told me that you were mean, that you hurt me. But you never hurt me that bad. You were just trying to teach me. I asked you to teach me. That's what it was. It was always that. They keep telling me lies, so many lies. And I'm starting to have nightmares. They tell me horrible things. They say that you tied me to a bed frame because you were mean. And I keep telling them to stop lying because I'm getting nightmares and fake memories. I had one specific nightmare that I remember. I was bleeding badly, and you kept saying the same thing. You spilled a drop, and you said it meanly, but I can't remember that. When I woke up, I thought I did, but it can't be real. Because you were nice. I'm positive. And the doctors won't listen. And it's all so frustrating. Because they told me that you were cruel. And now I have nightmares. I read about my case online. What they're saying you did to me is awful. I got nightmares. They're incredibly vivid. Now, before I lost all my sanity, I took up an old hobby, knitting. This is another thing you taught me to do, even though my mother is claiming to be the one who has taught me. I know it was you. I'm not allowed to keep anything I knit. And I can't knit unless somebody in a room watches me. They think I am going to try to kill myself. Not that I can blame them. I have violent tendencies. They also say that I have masochism. They say I enjoy pain. It's not something I considered before. I was always fascinated by the idea of it. I was never afraid of experiencing it. But regardless, knitting has been wonderful. Thank you for teaching me to knit. It's one of the only things that I enjoy. That and origami, of course. Anyway, I probably won't get to write to you much more. I barely manage to write these notes. It won't be long before the pity wears off, and I can't cry my way into a new piece of paper. Aubrey, October 8th. Mary, 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 Mary. I like your name. M-A-R-Y. Something soothing about it. I'm sure that this will be the last letter I write to you. And not because I can't get more paper, The doctors have decided that I cannot be trusted. Even though some of them say that I'm remembering. I'm not. It's just fake memories. Nightmares induced by the horror stories they told me. The lies. 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 So many lies. They think I've gone crazy. They didn't say that exactly. They think it's from trauma. Trauma. They use that word so much. They are moving me to a psychiatric ward. I've been in a normal hospital. They were monitoring my health. Now, they've decided that I am dangerous to myself or others. In their defense, I have become worse at hiding myself. I lash out easier, but it's oddly liberating to be able to lash out, to get angry, to let the little voice in the back of my head, the one that wants chaos, the one that wants to watch the effect of pain on someone's face. You taught me that. You showed me how happy you were when you let the little voice in your head have more influence. They don't think it's the voice in my head. They think it's the trauma and the 12 years that I spent missing. The, as they say, damage Mary inflicted caused it. So, that's what I have to thank you for today. Thank you for showing me that it's okay to be crazy sometimes. Other people's screams will stop. But mostly, thank you for giving me an excuse. The girl who was raised better, the one who has no reason to hurt people, gets more disgusted looks than me. Little me got in trouble when I hurt others. But the psychotic, traumatized girl who was kidnapped and tortured for 12 years gets a free pass. Goodbye, Mary. I'll miss you, even if I'm not supposed to. Aubrey, Bernice. Theme parks are the best. The roller coasters rule. But I didn't want to go into the House of Horrors. It looked dark and creepy, and I knew it was full of dead things and madmen, like the pictures on my dad's scary videos. That kind of stuff made my insides squirm and threaten to erupt buckets of puke. But Bernice had the tickets and me by the hand, and she was dragging me along and wouldn't stop. What was I supposed to do? Sit down and cry? I'd look like a baby, and Bernice would laugh. It was the first time she'd talked to me, so I didn't want that. Instead, I let her lead me to that dirty, gray building with the gargoyle-covered, finger-like spires, which rose into the cloudless, midday sky like a giant, concrete hand waiting to grab us. My feet dragged. The ground felt like quicksand. But Bernice kept me out by moving fast, getting us to the looming mansion, safe and sound. I said nothing when she handed the tickets to the bored-looking teenager wearing a Raiders of the Lost Ark t-shirt who was manning the booth. I said nothing when he complained we were too young, But it was okay if we really weren't scared. I said nothing when Bernice told him our parents said it was fine and pulled me through the thick sheets of plastic that hung like strips of flesh in the open door. I could still feel Dad's hand on my shoulder, nudging me on like he had towards Bernice. It was like I was being carried by that same momentum as I stepped forward into the darkness. And then, there I was, in a haunted house in Pleasure Beach, in Blackpool, holding hands with a girl from Northern Ireland. And I couldn't really believe this was me. Because if there was one thing I hated more than monsters, it was girls. Or at least, that's what I thought. Just a few minutes earlier, I'd been eating a burger at a white plastic picnic table on the veranda of the theme park family restaurant, sitting on a wobbly chair and slurping Coke while acting out a battle with my Star Wars toys. That's when I spotted the girl from our hotel, watching me from her seat a few tables away. It made me splutter Coke all over my Goonies t-shirt, because I hadn't expected to see anyone I knew here, so I hadn't been holding back on the sound effects. I tried not to go red as I looked away, sliding Vader and Luke into my lap. But I was glowing with embarrassment, so I failed. Like me, she was eating lunch with her family at one of the flimsy tables crammed into the packed restaurant courtyard. Like me, she was also trying to entertain herself while her parents babbled on about nothing, taking forever to finish eating and wasting precious attraction riding time. Except she was doing it in the less embarrassing way of juggling tennis balls. I knew her name was Bernice because that's what her sisters called her in the hotel lounge every evening, where I read Spider-Man comics and she juggled. She made those balls go so fast, it was hard not to sneak a glance. She never even dropped one, and mostly, she wasn't even paying attention to what she was doing. I tried not to care. I tried not to think she was cool, with her straw-colored hair tied up in pigtails and those freckles on her nose that were kind of cute. But she kept catching me watching, which was annoying. It made her stupid. Older sisters giggle, whisper in her ear, and laugh. I knew they were talking about me. It made my cheeks tingle and burn, so I had to get up and leave the room. I always looked back as I did, and she was always staring after me, and now she'd seen me playing with my Star Wars toys. And for some reason, I felt really dumb. I didn't want to look at her again, with my red face and Coke-stained shirt. But my head wouldn't stop, and when it turned, I got a horrible surprise. Bernice wasn't at her table anymore. She was standing right there beside mine, a tennis ball clutched in each hand. "Hey, my ma'am gave me tickets for a ride. Are you coming?" "What? Are you coming on a ride with me? I'm bored." "Go on, Kev," my dad said, nudging me out of my seat and pushing me towards her. Luke and Vader fell from my knees and hit the flagstones, You kids go ride the Chair O planes. We'll be finished when you get back, and we'll do another roller coaster. I didn't have time to retrieve my toys, and I didn't want to be seen doing it anyway. They were my favorite ones, and I didn't want to lose them. But suddenly, Bernice's eyes and smile seemed more important. She stuffed her tennis balls into the pockets of her jacket, then grabbed me by the hand, and we were off, weaving our way through the tables and crowds out of the restaurant, her sisters staring after us, sticking their tongues out and making kissy noises with their lips. And that was that. Except Bernice didn't want to go on the Chair O planes. And now I was in what looked like the dirtiest of dungeons, with plastic skeletons jiggling on the walls, dim red bulbs barely illuminating the hall, and the sound of recorded screams filling the air. My heart pounded like it was trying to break free, my breath catching with each shadow that stretched from the walls. The darkness seemed to tug at my limbs, squeezing tighter with every screech. I didn't like the plastic vampire sucking on the neck of a mannequin. I didn't like the wax werewolf with its snout stuck in the entrails of a scarecrow. I didn't like the life-size, glowering Jack the Ripper, blocking our path with his blood-stained knife. It wasn't just that. The whole place stank of mothballs and mold, a damp smell that reminded me of Gran's house when we'd gone to clear it out after she died. That same scent of damp or death. I wasn't sure which had stuck with me after just an hour in her house a year before. And it was back now, stronger than ever. And the air didn't just smell bad. It felt bad, like a horrible weight pressing down on me, squeezing the oxygen from my lungs, like Vader using the Force to crush a throat. I hated it, every bit, but Bernice loved it all. She squealed in delight at every discovery, pulling me through the halls at breakneck speed, barely pausing at each horrific sight before barreling us on to the next one, which was good in a way, as I didn't want to be there longer than necessary, but bad in another way, because I'd barely recovered from one scare before another leapt out. Frankenstein's monster staring wide-eyed on a table, blood-chilling. A trio of witches at a smoking cauldron full of bones. Nerve-wracking. A pack of rabid dogs with drooling teeth. Terrifying. And let's not talk about the clown. I tried not to show I was afraid. I mimicked her shoulders bobbing and her arms swinging when she laughed and joked around, and agreed the scary things were really cool. When she playfully pushed me towards the creature from the Black Lagoon, I made sure my intended yelp came out a giggle. When she said, grabbed my hand, and told me she was scared of Norman Bates, I bravely tightened my grip and said it was fine. I was glad it was dark, because that meant she couldn't see the expressions on my face, or how my eyes were squinting most of the time. I was gladder still when we rounded a final corner and saw the word exit. We were almost out. It had seemed like an age, but was probably only 5 minutes. Somehow, I'd made it without peeing my pants, and she had no reason to think I was a baby. With luck, she might even have forgotten Star Wars, and that's when it all went wrong. "My ball!" she gasped, releasing my hand to search in both her pockets. "I lost one of my balls." "Oh no," I replied, looking at the floor, hoping I'd find it. "When did you lose it?" "I don't know," Bernice snapped, knocking me against the rickety wall as she pushed past. "That's a stupid question. If I knew that it wouldn't be lost, I'm going to find it." She didn't wait for me to answer. Didn't wait at all. Just ran back into the corridor we'd come out of and disappeared. "Bernice!" I shouted, and my face tingled when I said her name aloud. "Wait!" She didn't. I stared at the corner she'd turned, hoping to hear her call back, listening for a trace of her, even her footsteps. But the wails from the speakers seemed to be getting louder and louder, seemed to be laughing at me now. I turned the other way and looked at the exit ahead, green letters glowing in the darkness, which seemed even darker now I was alone. For a second, I thought about running, getting out of there and waiting outside. For a second, maybe 2. But deep down, I knew I couldn't do that. I didn't want her to think I was a wimp. Being brave was somehow important now, but it wasn't the only reason I decided to follow her. I wanted to make sure she was okay. Dad would have been angry if I didn't. If I'd left her alone and something happened. I'd heard him say to Mum how he hated himself for not visiting Gran more often, for not making sure she was okay. Bernice wasn't my friend, but she could be, and friends wouldn't leave each other alone. Not in a place like this, even if the threat was all fake, especially because the threat was all fake. So back around the corner I went, straight into the arms of the skinned alive man who reached for me from an alcove in the wall. I didn't make eye contact with his lifeless wax eyes because he looked bloody and hideous, and I hated him. I moved on, walking faster, retracing my steps through the corridors, peering into the darkness at the shadowy figures that lurked there, trying not to see them if they weren't her. My heart pounded faster. My feet moved quicker. The screams, laughs, seemed to grow louder the further I went. I started to imagine that some of those screams might be hers, that some creature made of wax had somehow grabbed her. And then I was running, starting to panic, taking a corner too fast, yelping when I ran into monsters. "Watch it!" One of them, with stringy hair, shouted, putting an arm out to stop me. "You shouldn't be here, you little dweeb. Where's your mother?" It didn't take me long to realize they were just a couple of teenagers, a boy and a girl, both with long hair, holding hands. Still, I ducked under the outstretched arm and ran past them. I don't know why. I should have asked for help, or even asked if they'd seen her, but they were teenagers. They wouldn't have cared. Coming around the next corner, I saw two things that stopped me in my tracks. The first was the naked old man in the bathtub, with his black eyes and bath cap, stubbly beard, and thin, bony arm in the air, holding a long-handled scrubber. This one wasn't a monster, not any I'd ever heard of. But somehow, he scared me the most. I hadn't been able to look at him the first time around, had kept my eyes glued to the floor while Bernice giggled and peered into the bath. This time, I had to look, because the second thing I noticed was the tennis ball he was holding in his outstretched hand. "Bernice!" I hissed, gulping as I stepped towards the bathtub. "Are you there?" Screams, screeches, shrieks, and squawks from above. I moved closer, keeping my eyes on the tennis ball and not on the face of the man. He wasn't real. I knew that. He was made of wax. He couldn't hurt me. He couldn't do anything. He couldn't move. So why was the ball in his hand? And why was Bernice in the bath? It took me a second to understand what I was seeing. Bernice, lying face down on the smooth surface of wax that was meant to be water, from which the old man was rising up, her short auburn hair fanned out around her head, skirt hitched up around her knees. "Bernice," I whispered again, doing everything I could not to cry. "Are you okay?" My legs bumped against the rim of the ceramic bathtub. I lifted one arm to reach out. My eyes flicked to the face of the waxwork, which was far too close, its horrible blank gaze boring into me. The red bulb above the bathtub flickered. My fingers touched the top of Bernice's head. Something, arms, grabbed me from behind. And something, voices, screamed in my ears on both sides. I screamed, staggered back, stumbled, and fell to the floor. The flickering light bulb revealed two gangly forms, twisted shapes in the darkness, closing in around me, reached out their arms, making strange, slurping sounds that sounded like kisses. "Gotcha!" laughed one, and I knew straight away who it was. "Ha ha ha! You screamed like a little girl. Oh no! Did you piss your pants? Oh! Are you really scared? Do you want your mommy?" Bernice rose up in the bathtub, bumping the bulb and making it swing as her sisters danced around me, clutching their sides in laughter. The grin on her lips disappeared when she noticed the look on my face in the swinging light. "That was brilliant," laughed one of the girls, high-fiving the other above me. "Come on, Burr. Ma'am and Dad are waitin'." And just like that, they were gone, racing away from the bathtub and the wax man and me on the floor, and Bernice. And that's why I always avoided girls. I pushed myself up while Bernice climbed out of the tub and took back her ball. She had her back to me, and I had my eyes on the floor. She started to walk away, and I thought, good, go. Leave me alone with your stupid straw hair and ugly freckles. But then she stopped in her tracks and looked back. Sorry, she said, and I looked into a pair of darting eyes. It was my sister's idea. Kind of stupid, kind of. I thought it would be funny. A good prank. But it wasn't. She came closer. It was nice you came after me. I wasn't sure you would. I blushed, looked at my feet. I just wanted her to go. The screams from the speakers were better company. The lifeless creations populating the labyrinth were less likely to hurt me. Then, are you coming? She lifted her arm and held out her hand, and I blushed even more and looked up. We came in together. You're not gonna let me walk out on my own, are ya? One of the monsters might get me. She smiled. A small smile, apologetic. She was being friendly for real, and I liked it. I mirrored her smile and felt a flutter in my chest, something strange that made a lump catch in my throat. I had to swallow hard to get rid of it. At least you have those tennis balls to throw, if it does. Yeah, they make great weapons. Not as good as lightsabers, but here. She handed the one she was holding to me and took the other one out of her pocket. I thought of Luke and Vader on the ground back at the restaurant and wondered if they'd still be there when I got back. Mom and Dad definitely wouldn't have seen them. Any other time, the fear of losing them would have stabbed arrows of dread into my heart and had me racing back in a panic. But I didn't seem too bothered by it now. When Bernice offered her hand again, I took it. And then we were walking back the way we'd come, through the monsters and the noise towards the exit, the wailing house of horrors, with its hallways full of scares, closed in around us. But as we walked hand in hand through the corridors, past eerie figures, and through screams that now seemed to be quieter, I wasn't really afraid anymore. With Bernice by my side, it was like we were off on an adventure, like the Goonies in their subterranean caves. And even if our caves did house monsters, I realized they weren't so scary, and neither were girls. Death in the White Room. In the White Room, always clean and full of light. Death had made itself at home. It lingered like an unwelcome guest, curling up in the dark recesses behind doors, or lying in wait beneath the bed's shallow. Its ghastly form remained unseen, its wheezing breaths unheard, yet its presence was unmistakable, marked by the foul stench that clung to the air. It was a scent of old blood mingled with lye, and human refuse tinged with a sharp, lemony undertone. Arthur abhorred the lemon smell most of all. It was a poor parody of the fruit, all the sour and none of the sweet. They try to hide the nature of this place. Fresh paint over rotting wood, he said, his gaze drifting to the one dying beside him. The stranger was no more than a shadow of someone he once knew, a poor artist's rendition of his sister. Her skin, once golden and kissed by the sun, had turned pallid, marred with patches of purple. Her hair, once a rich brown, full of life and curls, had withered away to a handful of brittle wisps. Arthur had long forgotten the exact shade of his sister's eyes. Were they brown like mine? Or did they favor mother's green? He wondered, but could not recall. He could lean over this sleeping stranger's body, pry open an eye to see. But this was not his sister, as he would often lie to himself. Yet he was older now than when she first became sick, and this lie seemed harder to believe with each passing day. A nurse, the fat one with that little nose, spilled a bedpan in the corridor today, Arthur said, his voice low and bitter. Like flies drawn to shit, they swarmed over it to clean before I could see. But I did. Red. He clutched the cold hand of the stranger. White little flies. I want to pick the wings off them and watch them struggle. I want to... His words faltered as something arrested his speech. A subtle, almost imperceptible squeeze from the stranger's hand served to both soothe and silence him. The stranger was listening. Was it the cruelty I insinuated, or the profanity that stirred you for a moment? Stranger, Arthur said, a wicked little smile curving his lips, though his eyes remained wide and wanting. He watched her lids, hoping to see them open, to see her well again. Yet no such miracle could exist. Her eyelids remained heavy, puffy, and bruised. There is a bit of father in me, you know, he whispered. A nastiness. Arthur turned to his left, gazing out of the window at the dying day. A thick wall of cloud loomed just above the horizon. Its underbelly dyed a deep orange by the setting sun, while the tops blushed pink against the purple sky. A seagull had perched itself on the windowsill, its clueless yellow eyes peering in. Yet, to Arthur, those eyes seemed mocking. The bird seemed to taunt him in silence. I smell the air, fresh and clean, while you languish on your sister's slow death. With a sudden, powerful flap of its wings, the seagull took off. A small down feather drifted in, slipping through a crack in the window, landing softly by Arthur's feet. He bent down to pick it up, but even that slight disturbance of air sent it skittering away, disappearing into the shadows beneath the bed. It was dark under the bed, where the shadows coiled thick and heavy. Death slumbered there, a patient snake nestled in the tall grass, awaiting an unsuspecting foot to wander too close. Arthur felt the bite, the venom coursing through his veins, carried by the flow of his blood. Sleep claimed him soon after, and not a peaceful dream was had that night. The stranger sat perched on the window stool, fingers gently pawing at the glass as if yearning to escape. Their white gown, soft and delicate, was adorned with 1,000 downy feathers. The moon outside shone as brightly as the midday sun, bathing the world in a clean, silver light. When the stranger turned to face Arthur, familiarity struck. His sister looked at him with knowing yellow eyes and a petulant pout on her full lips. "You should open the window," she said, her voice hollow. Arthur cleared his throat, his voice strained. "Your feathers are too small. They won't catch the wind. You would fall like a chick too eager to leave the nest." She offered a wan, knowing smile. "These aren't my wings, silly. My wings are there," she said, gesturing towards the darkness beneath the bed. "Tucked away in the shadow, you try so hard to ignore. Despite the smell I know your nose catches. Would you abandon me? Ride the clouds with death and mocking seabirds, while I remain tethered to the earth with Father." Bang, bang, the sound tore through the night, rattling the very bones of the world. The moon fled, hiding behind a curtain of dark clouds. The door at the far end of the room shuddered on its rusted hinges, each violent shake loosening it further. The wood was aged and sodden, swollen with damp that wept from the splintered cracks, leaking a slow, miserable drip. Bang! Again, the assault resumed. A fist of stone, a voice of thunder on the other side. The clouds had deepened to a menacing red, pouring rain and spitting lightning. Thunder rumbled across the land, shaking the earth and rattling the windows in their frames. "I cannot be your shelter any longer," she whispered, her voice frail and sickly. "I will breathe my last, and the storm will hunt you down. The rain, relentless as it has been to me through the years, will hammer at you with the same fury. See the shadow, and together we shall fly." "I am afraid," Arthur said. The stranger took Arthur's hand in hers as he drew near. "This is what a sister's hand is for," she said softly. "To hold and be free of fear." It was day, a bright blue day, with a sky unmarred by clouds, white or gray. The window stood wide open, allowing the fragrance of rain-kissed grass to drift in. Outside, far below, a throng of tiny white flies swarmed,